All right, live stream. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get going here in a few minutes. If you got topics or questions, leave them in the YouTube chat. And yeah, let's see how this goes. All right, here we go, party people. Let's see if this works. Can you see me now? Can you see me now? Wop, wop, wop. Go down, brightness, go down. Okay, what you should be able to hear is the whirring of 1,000 fans going on in the background because my computer is still about to explode. I have done nothing about changing over the live stream computer to the DaVinci Resolve Beast that I have sitting here in the corner. So that's news from here. So if you can hear that loud whirring in the background, that is my computer here that's about to explode. Hello. How are you doing? This is the live stream, and yes, a few days early, only because I'm working the next 3 days, and so is all of this gear. So it's about to be picked up, and I'm going to have to come up with some excuse to the first AC as to why some of the batteries are not charged. But that's my worry, not yours. What am I doing the next few days? I'm doing a job for a water corporation. They sell water, which is in high demand, and they want to do a commercial about it. So that's what we're doing over the next few days. And the brief, almost like every brief, is Tree of Life. It's funny how you see the treatment in its infancy stage, and then as you move on, you see the creative, interesting elements just slowly but surely chopped off, right until you get to the very end. And it's not until you get to the end where you end up shooting something that, in essence, is like every other commercial that's ever existed, and it's all ad and it's no creative. And that's where we are. Yes, Tyler, can I kick in questions here? It's been a while. Yeah, you go for gold. We're going to do questions for a minute, and then we are looking at Nick something or other's project. This is all about football people. Looks like some sort of documentary. If Nick is in the chat, probably I would put some information about whatever the project is, right? So it could be what you shot it on, how long did you shoot it for, how many people were there with you, what sort of choices you had. The way that I'm going to be breaking this down is because I don't really live in the documentary world as much, and it doesn't interest me as much. So what I'm going to do is say what I would do with a crew of a certain amount of people. That way, at least, I can have some sort of interest in it for myself, because it's fun to look at other people's stuff and go, oh, yeah, I probably wouldn't have done that. I probably would have done this or something like that. So that's the angle that we're going to take it from. And let me just move this thing real quick. Okay. Okay, so shall we get into the question? Josh Hill, Sapdo, Smash Hill. Did everybody listen to the podcast with my boy Bun Hazel? That crazy bastard. He's probably going to be pissed. There's no doubt he's going to be pissed that I was making fun of his last name, because what I did when I was recording these episodes is that, people would come in, you sit down in the studio, you say, hello, how are you doing, blah, blah, blah. You have a little bit of back and forth conversation before you actually get into the studio. And just for a mic check, I like to get everybody's name and the way that they pronounce it, just so I don't fuck it up. And that's not how you pronounce Todd's last name, but I took creative license only because I think he could actually run with it. I think there is something to that. It's like there's a little trick, right? This is a little trick, and I'm sure that I've talked about it on the podcast before. One of the things that you do, especially if you're not operating on the job, this can be a little bit trickier, but if you're not operating on a job, here's what you do. And I take this from last week. We did 3 days, and it was all Steadicam. And it was for this sports betting company. It was all dark and people in bars and they're cheering at the television screens and there's lots of haze and there's tungsten light mixed with the blue moonlight. It looks good, right? We're going to talk about it on the podcast. But because it's all Steadicam, I'm sitting there. I'm at the monitor most of the time. I'm at the monitor depending on how you set up Video Village or how you like it. A lot of the times you'll be sitting right there with the director. It's not like a feature film where you have your own monitor set up in your own station area. Sometimes you can do that, but with the speed and the size of the crew that we had here, really there wasn't much opportunity to set up your own little station. So I'm sitting basically with the director for 3 days. And with the director, oftentimes comes a whole bunch of other people, right? There's people looking over your shoulder, there's hair, there's makeup, there's wardrobe, there's all of those people. And from time to time, agency people and client, if they have questions, they'll come over to the monitor or they'll watch directly from that monitor rather than their own monitor. And the easiest thing that you can do to make everybody's life happy is be enthusiastic about what you're shooting and say at the end, Jesus, that was an amazing job. That was beautiful. Whatever it is, something positive around the image. Even if they come over and they say, oh, we got this a few times because it's people in bars at night. It's dark. And how moody you go is always the question. And people are always going to give you less leeway than you would like, especially clients when they want to see their spokesperson. If it's someone famous, they want to see him in the bar. They want to make out everybody in the background and all those sorts of stuff like that. They don't want it to feel too dark and moody. But you can quell all of those fears. All you have to do is, as soon as the take is over, is go, oh my God, that was beautiful. Holy shit, did you see that? And you look to the director, or you look to somebody else, or you look to the first AC. And you can do that a few times, right? That gets you far along. But then if that starts to wane, say you've already done that on day one of the job, they know that trick. Because what will happen inevitably is, because you're the person there along with the director who are the taste curators. You're the person that they're looking for to say, this is good. Once you say that, everybody else jumps on board. They tend to, especially if you do it in a positive moment. But people start to catch on, right? You can't say it after every shot. There's moments for these things. The other way you can get around it, especially if you're not operating yourself, is you can congratulate people or praise people from the monitor. And usually you can do this because they're far enough away. You can be loud enough that the agency, the client, and sometimes the director they won't be in on the gag, but they will experience the positivity. They'll be tricked into thinking that they're doing something fantastic and this is all good. Meanwhile, you get your way. So, for example, on this job, there's a Steadicam move. We've done 13 takes of the Steadicam move. The director's happy with his choice of takes. It's time to move on. Time is eating away. So all you do is you let the Steadicam person do their move, and then you just yell out over the monitor, holy shit! That was a fucking move. Atta baby, whoever it is. Or focus puller. You see the focus, oh my God, you nailed it. You just lean over, oh, hey, nailed that one. Oh my God. So that's just a little trick I just thought of now, because I was using it left, right, and center. I used it about 4 times when we were short on time and needed to move on, and agency had their 15 different versions, and anything that can help out being positive. Okay, here we go. Let's get into some questions before we get into this little breakdown. Let's see, what time is it? Ooh, 10:12. Okay. What are the essentials when putting together your first lighting kit? This is something that we've talked about multiple times, Cody, so I won't spend too much time on it. But in my mind, now with $2,000, you can do quite a bit. You can go heavy. I mean, you can't really go heavy into the mat game, but you can get some cheap-ass mats. The thing with the cheap-ass mats is all of that stuff is going to get flushed down the toilet as soon as you move on. I think the easiest thing to do is to stick with soft light, one soft, one hard, flag, bounce. Maybe a 6x6. That can get you through an enormous amount of shit. A 6x6, I'd probably go quarter grid, because then you can, if you need a 4x4, you can flap it over and it doubles the diffusion, so it becomes a half grid. So I'd go 6x6, quarter grid for sure. Then I would go some sort of matte solution. At $2,000, you're probably looking at one of the cheap knockoff ones, as big as you can possibly get it. That'll get you out of a whole lot of shit. Then you get a tube. An Astra is probably going to be $350. That's what I would recommend, the Astra, or Astera, as they call it properly. I would say that. And then you're going to want something hard, which, what can you get away with in the aperture world? This is the 120D. I don't know how much that is, but somewhere around there, you're going to want something hard that you can put a little bit of punch into an area. Other than that, you don't really need much, because by the time you're starting to light good stuff, you're getting crew and you're getting people to come out and help you, so you don't go too heavy in the lighting game. Whereas lighting kits don't really scale for cinematographers. Lenses scale, right? Because you're not going to change lenses on a job. As it gets bigger, you can still use the same lenses. Whereas as you get bigger with jobs, less and less you're going to be bringing your own gear, and even people will frown upon that, because you'll have, unless you're super high level, right? If you're Chase Irving and you've got 15 light mats, which I'm sure he has, you can bring those on, and the gaffer won't be upset or be bummed out like you're cutting into their pie of the rental world. You can bring those on because that's what you like, and you're Chase Irving and you're rather successful. If you're just starting out, that can be a little bit harder of a sell to be pushing all of your lights into someone else's rental cut. So I would say be very wary of that. Okay. Tyler, did I remember you owning a Zeiss vintage standard speed set? And if so, how do you like them? Are they a good set to own? Well, interesting you ask, Tyler, because this is, what is this? The 32 mil. This is the 32 mil of the Zeiss standard speed, the Mark IIs, Mark 1s, dog shit, you want to stay away from those. But these are the Mark IIs, and I love them. I have used these things on, I'm going to guess, I don't know, at least 10 projects a year. They're so small. They're so tiny. The bummer is the coverage. The bum in terms of moving forward, the bummer is the coverage, because it will cover Super 35. It'll cover OpenGate on the XT or the Mini or the SXT. It'll cover OpenGate, but there is a little bit of vignetting with a few of the lenses. I think the 24 and the 32 vignette, but they're so tiny, and they're matched, and they're beautiful, and they're still fairly cheap. You can get them coated, uncoated. There's still lots of service parts for them. I think Arri stopped servicing them, or Zeiss stopped servicing, but places like Duclos, it's still a very modern lens in its construction, so they're easy to take care of, super small and light for shipping. You can, I mean, trying to think. Here's my lens kit. Ta-da! This thing. Where are you going to find a T2 16 millimeter this small? This is not going to happen for drone stuff. They got a great look, wide open. They look way different than 2.8. This is 2.8 that we're looking at. So you don't get the same flares, but I love these things. You can still get them. Say you get a set for a nice set like this, maybe you're looking 26 grand. That'll give you the 16, the 24, the 32, the 50, and the 85, which is the standard spec. These things, I rent these out for 700 Australian dollars per day. And you can use them on any scale of project. They have a real cool look to them. Easy enough with the standard fronts. You clip on a matte box. You're looking at getting your money back a hell of a lot faster than the next level up, which I'm going to talk about. So to answer your question, yes, I have them. Yes, I love them. And the only way I would sell them and move them on is if I had another set that was of higher rental value that I could get my hands on, because I have too many sets at the moment to be able to use them on all of my jobs. But they're a good go-to for stuff that doesn't have the budget for other lenses. And sometimes you don't have the $1,200 for the S4s. You don't have the $1,800 for the Master Primes. You don't have the $2,500 for the Master Anamorphics. On those projects, you're doing a day. You still want it to look good. You still want it to be easy for the crew. They still got all the gears in the right spot. You can still rely on them. I cannot speak highly enough. And I actually like the look. I really like the wide open look. It's, as I say, so much different than the other stuff. So I would highly recommend them, especially if you can get a good set. The problem is now you're starting to run into people trying to hawk the Mark 1s, which are complete shit, as Mark 2s, and you're getting people rehousing them. So you got to be really careful about how you go about getting them. Okay. Nick here, shot on the Ursa Mini 4.6K with Sigma Art glass, a crew myself, first AC grip and a PA. Lights were the Aperture LS1, 4-foot Quasar floppy poly, shot in 7 hours. Okay, that's the project that we're going to be looking at. Should we get into it, or should we answer more questions? Okay, let's do one more. Here we go. Do you, any of the crew, watch, listen to the show? Any funny on-set stories from being recognized? No, the crew know that I'm completely full of shit. Everybody that I work with. That's to say, when I go to LA, people will have listened to the show, and they think I'm just as annoying in person as I am on the show. So no, the only weird ones was really at Cinegear, and it was just weird seeing people that listen to the show who have no idea who I am, who use the same phrases I use, and who do the same weird shit. That's really the only one. I try and, because there is, I mean, we talked to Eric last week. There is certainly, and this is probably, I don't know if this is worthy of sharing, but there is certainly a downside to doing this podcast from my own professional point of view. There is a fine line between being the gimmicky guy that's trying to sell shit about, those who can't teach. That's why I'm trying my best not to teach. Definitely don't take this as a teaching exercise. This is simply me regurgitating the stuff that I do. At least a big podcast is me saying, this is what I did, and sometimes I fuck it up and sometimes I get it right. And there is a downside to having the podcast because people think, directors, cinematographers, crew members, they think you're that, they're just like Shane Hurlbut. He's been hurt by it. It's a weird thing to be dividing your time. Why aren't you just focused on doing that all the time? Your one job. So there is a bit of an awkward side to it as well. So I try and find that balance. I was going to say something else about that. I can't remember what it was. Being recognized, crew, taking the piss. No, it's gone for now. Okay. Let's do what are your thoughts on investing in full frame glass? Zeiss came out with the Supremes. You've got Canon, Sigma, blah, blah, blue. Do you think it'll drive down the price of Super 35 glass? I think you still got that 3-year window. I think you've easily, the LF is awesome. The LF is the thing that will change the game, but the battery we've talked about is enormous. They haven't got them out in full force, and they're not going to take over the mini world. And really, the top is going to dictate what the bottom does. And even though it seems like it's going to be a push from below with all these things getting bombarded, all these lens companies coming out with this stuff, but still there are going to be companies like the Zeiss Supremes that will rise to the top. The ARRI Signature Primes are great, but they're huge. The Zeiss ones seem to be the best option. I had to play with them at Cinegear. It's just a very weird time. You gotta have a lot of cash for the Supremes. The lower ones, it's all about what you can make money on your projects using. As I say, with the standards, no one questions bringing on the standards. Directors know them. Production companies know them. Whereas if you're the guy, this is like going into that red world again. If you're the person that rocks up with the Canon PL lenses and you say, this is what I want to use, it's just creating that ripple. And, you can be the type of person that stands up to that ripple, and says these things are good anyway. Don't trust what everyone else is saying. These should be used at a very high level. Like I'm thinking about Joseph Kahn when he shot his movie on the zines. You could be that person, but you can also not be that person and just use the industry standard. I tested, yes, Michael, I tested the Leica Dahlias. There's a few sets down here. I don't know. I'm sort of in the world where I don't see the immediate need for the LF in my commercial workflow. It would be fun. I would definitely use it. If I could use it or not use it, I would use it just for the resolution. The full frame is cool. But I certainly wouldn't run out and purchase one or think about, I don't know, if it's going to change the world that much on a smaller scale. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't have the answers. But so far the glasses, except for the Supremes and the Signature Primes to a certain extent, what you're giving up in speed on the lens, a stop between the Supremes and the Masters. You gain in format size, you gain in sensor size. Does that equal each other out? Does it really matter? I'll tell you what, if I was going to do a movie, if someone signed me up to do a movie, you'd have to be a dipshit not to choose the 65. I say that when Deakins chose the SXT, but I don't know. It seems like I've seen the images from the 65. I've seen it in person. I've seen it. I've graded it. I've looked at it. I don't know. I don't think it can be beat for the moment. So I would still vie for the 65, or I'd probably go the LF anamorphic would be cool as well. Okay, that's going to do it for the questiones. If you got them, shout them out during the little breakdown part. But let's look at some of our images here. I'll just flip through them so we can quickly see exactly what we're going to be looking at. Where are you? So here we are. Let's start at that one, actually. This is Man Tying Shoes. This is all about football players. They're racing around. They're having a gay old time. I didn't actually listen with the volume on. I just went through and looked at the images. So this is the kind of stuff that we're going to be looking at. And it looks pretty cool. First off, Nick, if you're out there, I think good job. I think the shadow density is nice throughout the project. I think the frames are interesting. I think a lot of the lighting, especially with the amount of crew that you had, was really, really good. And yeah, so I would say first up, congratulations. Now, let's start here. Good things. We got some really good things here. This is the easy stuff. First thing you'll notice, first thing that pops out to me is the reflective light on the ground. So you got this, you got this, you got this shoe, which is looking nice. Then you got this and this. Just enough highlight to combat the shadows, right? Because the darks would not be dark if you didn't have the pops of light. So really, really good. The framing choice is great as well. You're shooting into the light. Imagine being around on the front side of this and looking back in. It wouldn't be near as interesting. This would all be super flat. You'd have very little shadow. And I think this is a good example, the entire piece, of keeping a mood throughout. There were some sprinklings of shots that maybe didn't fit the mood, but keeping a mood throughout and keeping it consistent, all by choice of light angle, all by just dictating this is the way that we're going to shoot, would then dictate the density of the shot and then carry it through the entire project. So I think a really good example of doing some good stuff. So this one, easy. You're going to run across this shot if you're a cinematographer, probably 20 times a year, where you're having to do some close-up in a spot with not a lot of light, with not a lot of crew, with not a lot of people. What's the easiest way to get there? Put the light over here, which is an LS1, an aperture light according to Nick. Even if it isn't, you put the light over there, you put the blacks over here, and you shoot into the light, looking to get these little hits here, these little hits here, these little things in this zone. I just started up Siri for some reason. So I would say here, awesome job, keeping it very nice and easy. Okay, to the next one. Let's go tab. Not it. Every time. Okay, now we're outside. This is, I don't know if you got extremely lucky with the day or if you're just that smart, Nick, but the entire game, so there's a bunch of game footage mixed in with the people getting ready to go to the game. One of those sort of documentary things that's supposed to be heightened realism. I don't know if you got lucky or if you're good, but the sideline that the home team was on, or that your team was on, that you were doing it, was great because the entire game was backlit. So this is a nice frame only because of the angle. I can't imagine with the crew that you have that you're doing much back here. I can imagine that the sun, if we come over here, the sun is going to be over there somewhere. It's probably looking at the sky. It's probably coming in through the clouds over there. But even if there were no clouds, you're still hitting the right direction because you've got this. You know, you got these little things, and then it falls off into shadow. Again, not a whole lot of work necessary to make this shot look good, yet it still does. Z. So I would think this is the spot where you would want to be. This is as good as you could make something like this as this look. It keeps with the rest of the mood, which is dark, right? You've set up that dark mood in the tying of the shoes, in the guy in the locker room. You're setting that mood, and then when you go outside, do you want to really go high and bright? No, you want to keep it still down. You want to keep the level down, and I think this is a really good job. Again, just because of angle. Now, say we were here and we had unlimited resources. There's not actually too much you could change with unlimited resources, only because, you know, it's like a car. There's so many reflections in here. You start putting up giant bounces and things, that's going to be seen. But if I were to, I probably wouldn't change anything. I'd probably just neg here behind me to get even more contrast, depending on what that sun is actually doing. If that sun is in that high cloud, then I would definitely bring in the neg. If that's actual proper sun, it's hard to tell from the shape of the shadow. But if that's actual proper sun, then I would have just left it, because then you get too much crunch, especially with how reflective that helmet is. Okay, let's look here. Is it too late to submit a project for you? Yes, it's too late today, but there will be another live stream next week. Okay, it was half luck and half choice. I already picked a side to shoot into shadow, and the team happened to land on that side. Yeah. Well, that was good. Very, very good. I wouldn't tell that to anyone else. I would say that you just did that all on your own. Okay, next up. This is the one, I would imagine you're sort of in the same locker room space. This is the one where you give them, they will only remember what you give them. And this is one of those times where it's like, we could have made this as cool as the other one. I think this top-down look lets us down in terms of contrast, because where we're looking, the point of focus is all the same level. You know, we're not really getting any contrast. This is just all the same level, and then the level drops so drastically in the background that you don't, I mean, you get the light to dark in the composition, but the layers are so unsubtle that it doesn't feel as polished. If we go back to this one, come on, we're in this moody world. It's dark, it's grungy, there's reflections, and then this looks like real life, and real life is boring. So I would say, you know, things that you can do to fight it would be, especially on these detail shots, using the exact same method that you used before. Say, okay, you really want that front shot. I would just push whatever this fixture is. It's probably a house fixture. I would just push it farther backwards to eliminate this front stuff, right? If you can do that, if you can push it back, then what's going to happen is the light is going to fall less and less this way. So at least you get some fronty shape. Whereas here we're getting so much fill that it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't feel as in the mood, as in the groove as this one. And that's only saying that, you know, you had to choose this angle for the front-on shots. I don't know, you could still try and get a little bit of sideness, try and get a little bit of shape to it, rather than here it just feels slightly less shapely. So that's why I would say fight to create this stuff in the front. And I understand moving fast, but you know, again, if you had a whole heap of people, I probably would have gone for something like this. Depends on where we're at, but I'd probably go with a 4x4 or a 6x6 with a grid. You put a light mat through the grid, and the honeycomb keeps it from spreading all over the spot. And then you move it, so rather than, let's do a floor plan here. So person here, the grid is overhead. This is an overhead diagram. Rather than having the person right in the middle of it and all this light falling straight down, you just move the 6x6, we're going to call it, back this way. So that then only, now the person is here in the 6x6. So there's a lot happening behind him, but not a lot happening forward. And if you have that grid on there, it controls the spill. You're really the lighting becomes more about moving that 6x6 forward and backwards, or moving the person forwards and backwards, so you get just enough fall to where, in the white, this doesn't help you at all, right? There's no reflectiveness in there. It's all sort of a dull finish on the white sleeve. It's also white when you're going for that mood. And really what you would want is a darker color so that you can set the tone. Whereas now we have to set the tone for the gloves, and it's always going to be brighter on the hands because it's white. So I would say that is how you could tackle it if you had a little bit more time or more resources available to you. Okay, we go from there. We go to this under the brim shot. And the under the brim shot, always hard, always difficult. I will be dealing with it tomorrow when we're out on a boat with people with mandatory hats on for the Water Corporation. But you've done some good things. Number one, I would say you got an eye light in there, which hopefully you did that on purpose and that wasn't just luck. But the eye light is good. The part that I don't sort of prefer as much is this bit in here. It's cool. The levels, right? The background, even though it's got some sort of weird vignette on it, the background level is all good, but you got a little bit of an edge here. Up here, you got a little bit of an edge, but here you got nothing. It just sort of blends into this and the dark hair. I probably would have gone, instead of coming in this side of him, I probably would have hung it over, give him one of these ones, light matte or whatever you've got, hang it over this way, and then just get just that hint of edge here. Let this go. The eye light, if it is an eye light and you're worried about keeping the levels low, because that's always the tricky thing with the eye light, especially with people with hats. How do we get that little glint in the eye without that eye light pushing too much level onto them and taking all the contrast that you're working so hard and flattening it out? That's the tricky bit. And that's why, I've talked about this before, that's why you have to increase the level of light. Sometimes, if you're anticipating a very dark scene where you want an eye light, you actually have to pump a fuckload of level in. Because if you don't pump a lot of level in, say you're lighting it to, 10 foot candles, just a very, very low level of lighting, which you can do. 800 on the Alexa, shooting super speeds, 1.3, you don't need any level. But if you light to that level and then you go, shit, person's eyes are all black, we can't get an eye light in there, we need to. That's when you bring in your little trick, your little ice light, or what did you use? Eye light was an ice light down the hallway. Yeah. Okay, so you got that method. The easier method, if you're low on space, I see you're talking about Nick getting it all the way down the hallway. The easier thing, and I think I've mentioned this before, my go-to eye light is a dado light, a little dado, and the dado is then cupped with a little 8-ounce plastic white cup, and it just gives this really, really low dim. And then you can just use the dimmer and you get it right down, right until it's just illuminating. It's like the perfect little light bulb that is contained. And you can, you get the gaffer, you put a little black on the back of the card, on the back of the cup. That way it keeps it nice and contained, but it's really, really light and you can get it in super close. But to be able to do that, rather than putting it super far away like Nick's done, if you just light it up another 2 stops, put in a 0.6, and then use your little eye light to help you. It gives you a lot more control, because if you don't have that 0.6 in and then you try and get that dado in there, it could end up just washing out all your hard work. So I'd go a little bit back here on this light, and then I would take this top light and I would try and get it over here and coming in this way. So you still get this shadow on the nose, but maybe not quite as much wrap. And what that will give you is you go highlight here, more highlight starting down and going this way, and then you get edge here. This turns to darkness, and then that will make this highlight stand out even more. So again, really good instincts as to where to put these things and what to be looking at, and you haven't gone too crazy on the background level, which is always the danger with these things. So I would say, yeah, it looks good. Okay, we'll go to the next one. This is my favorite shot of the entire ad, I think, or the entire little story. I think this is getting the level, the angle, the technique that we're talking about. This is that shot. This is one of those ones where you set it up and you're like, this is the fucking shot. We nailed it. Like, this is the look that we're going for. Carries over that same density that we saw in the shoe shot. We know that it's day, but it's dark inside. It's got that Steve Annis, Chase Irving sort of vibe where it's daylight, but it's dark. And it's got some shape and it's got some mood. And why does this work? Well, let's look at it. Why it works is because we've got the level coming from over here, and it's hard to make out because I've got my screen dimmed so it doesn't show up all over my face. But I don't think the sun is over here. I think the sun is back over this way. So the sun is out of shot. And it's important that the sun is out of shot because we don't want that thing blowing out and making, especially if you're on the Ursa, you don't have all of the dynamic range in the world. The Alexa is a little bit more forgiving, but it's good that that sun is out of the shot. Then, oosh, boom. You got the light coming in here. It looks like a high cloud shadow. This doesn't look like a full sun shadow. It's almost like if this was a big budget and you could do whatever you wanted and the sun was just that little bit higher in the sky up here, you could just run a 4x4 array down the side of the bus. We've seen this a whole bunch of times. I forget what movie it was. Something with Bill Murray or The Little Miss Sunshine. Something like that, where they're in a car the whole time and they just rigged all around the top of the windows. They've got this rig of diffusion so that you can't see it when you're looking out, but it's softening the shadows coming in. So that's essentially the same as what an overcast sky is going to be doing. The important bit is the angle that you've chosen. That makes this shot. You're looking this way. That makes everything. It gives us this shape here. It gives us this shape here, the reflective skin. This is what I was talking about in the last live stream. This is not that bright because of the amount of level hitting his face. It's that bright because of the sheen. And you get that extra highlight pop, almost like a car highlight, just by getting the right angle to the light that's coming outside. So sometimes you would have to pivot. You'd have to move in order to find that. But here, we've got him, even just looking at the composition. Go back and get rid of all this stuff. Even looking at the composition, you got our man, he's on a third of the frame. You got our other guy. You got the line of their eyes going through. I mean, it's good. It's got depth it's got something in the foreground. It's got our subject. It's got something in the mid background and then something in the deep background. All different layers of light, all keeping things interesting. Dark colors. If these were white jerseys, it wouldn't be near as nice. This is, again, maybe a little bit of luck, but also you have to put yourself in that position. And this just goes to show you that, yes, you can know all this stuff and have the crew to make it happen, but a lot of the stuff can happen without much crew at all. You just have to know the principles. And this is one of those exact shots. So I think probably pretty great. The flip side of this would be how to easily fuck up a shot like this would be to look the other way inside the bus. Looking the other way inside the bus with the light over there, what's going to happen is you're going to get a shittier sky. You may get this same, you'll certainly get less light on the inside than on the outside, but it's just going to change the light, the travel, the shadow. So I think this is really as good as it gets from a lighting perspective. I can't imagine that you've got anything up in the bus. Maybe you've put up a floppy, but it seems like you don't really have control because it's a football team. So I can't imagine you put a 4x floppy in with the bus. But if you were going to look at doing anything, it would probably be flopping inside the bus and then bringing a little bit more around this way. But this is one of those ones where you set it up, you'd be like, yeah, we're ready to go. You don't really have to do much. The rest would just be tinkering while cast or AD or director is going over performance or something like that. You'd be tweaking a little bit, but other than that, I think really good. Okay. Mr. Cole Chilton have fun on the boat. Did you probably 6 of those last year? Did probably 6 of those. They're on a boat. I don't get it, but I'm with you. Okay, let's go to the next shot. This one. Now I understand. This is in that documentary world, but it does go in line with what we said earlier, which is they're going to use whatever you give them. And this is this sort of shows off front light and high front light. And not to saying there's a space for this sort of look, but I think it goes against the other shots that you are using in this ad. Yeah. The shape is rough, but the shape doesn't really matter for something like this, right? Because it's supposed to be a little bit gritty. It's supposed to be a little bit grungy. It's a football team. They're trying to be tough and look cool. So it doesn't really vibe with the cool bit, but you don't have to worry about something like this. Whereas on a commercial, if you had someone, it'd be very hard to get away with something like that. But again, if you loop around here, you don't get to see their faces. But if you turn them around, then you do get to see their faces. In a documentary world, you don't, so you sort of have to eat it and just shoot the thing. But you can see what we get is very hot skin, sky, relatively bland because there's no contrast coming from it. It's all coming from over here. And then just their ratios to the background. It gets worse and worse as you do front light. And I guess the one thing that you are winning with is at least you're not showing the deep background. At least you've gone straight to the sky. That's a good save. Because if you were to come up with the camera and tilt down with it, so you're looking more straight on them, it would get even less interesting because you'd be getting even more hot background highlight. Yeah, backed into a corner, and yeah, sometimes you just got to eat it. And that appears to be the case here. So no need to go there further. Say, let's look at this from a larger budget perspective. Say you need to be shooting for some crazy ass reason. You need to be shooting this direction. Whoops. On a film or on a commercial, you think, especially because we're looking at the sky, we could just turn them because the sky is. You're not going to be able to position the audience member is not going to be able to orient themselves if we're only looking at the sky. It doesn't matter which way we're facing. It would all be what we saw before the shot and what we saw after the shot. But ideally, you just rotate them. And then if that wasn't working, what you would do is if we had to look this way, there was some important feature for the story in the background, I'd probably try and get an overhead or fly swatter as far away from them as you could possibly get it and have it fairly light like a half soft frost. And then just try, sometimes the easiest way to light outside, if you don't, because some people are anti using an 18K and sometimes it does look like shit. It's very hard to get the balance right. A lot of times what works with a shot size like this is going to be a 12 by of something light where you mirror into it. So you need 2 4x4 mirrors. You get 2 4x4 mirrors. You angle them so that the sun is hitting them and then going into the fabric. And that'll get you, sometimes, depending on the weather, it will get you a shitload of level. And it'll feel quite natural. If you just open up that 12 by, you get a little bit of shapeliness. You can cut the harshness of these shadows with that overhead. Then you BYO your own sun this way, long ways across the frame, and then you fly the old 20 by or the 12 by or the 40 by 12, however long the shot has to go for. You just fly it in there. That way you can still it'll still feel like this. It'll still feel real fronty because you'll never be able to, you'd have to really knock the shit out of that with that fly swatter overhead to make it not feel fronty. But you can just get a little bit more shape on it. So I would say that is where to go in that world. Let's see. Okay, next up, what do we got? 59 minutes. Okay, next shot. We got a few more here. Now we're talking. Jesus. Sweet Jesus. Look at this. You go from this, which is okay, not great, to what is going on? Why won't you switch? Why won't you switch Photoshop? There we go. This to that. Bam. Immediately. Look, now we've come up. We can see the background. Why is this interesting, people? For the love of God. Surely. Let's go down. Surely we can recognize why this is a good shot. If not, let's get into it. We've got sun over here. Choo, 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 choo. We've got sun over here. We're doing nothing on this side. We are getting this beautiful light on this person. We're getting a nice edge here. The background naturally falls to a pleasing area because of the way the light is falling. We're shooting into these dark trees. These people are in the background. They've got level, but it's dark level. It's not fronty, bright, lit level. So your eye, you look at this frame and you tell me where your eye is drawn to. I would be shocked and appalled if you didn't admit the truth and it was just here. Right? This is where you look instantly. Not only because the focus is there, but because the light, that's where it's telling us to look. Everything is dark here. You got good composition with these guys. Again, in the middle ground, peppering with interest. We've got a deep background. We've got a mid background. We've got our person in frame here. We've got our little things separating this bit. It's dark. This is one of those ones where you get the, sometimes it pays to be flexible in the documentary world because you can easily set up and capture these things. It doesn't take much. All you have to know are those basic principles which carry over from documentary to commercial to feature, anything like that. This is cool. You got this straight line down here, adding even more depth. This one's cool over here. It's probably hitting him in the head. That's sort of your choice. But other than that, I mean, it's a fucking world apart from this to this. And I think this sort of stuff keeps you in the world of this, right? I believe this. These guys are playing football. Here they go. Now they're out there. This one, not quite as good. Okay. Let's look at the next one. What have we got? To see if I can get this in one click. Nope. Jesus. Okay. Here we go. This is our interview bit. We got a lot of good things going. A lot of things that I like. I would only make one small change. So, in terms of the subject, the framing, let's talk about the framing first. Awesome frame. You got person, you got them on that third, lined up nicely. You got enough room for them to breathe, and you got these things running down the background. They're wooden. It looks great against his super pasty white skin. You got the redhead ginger look going. That's cool. You got this line in the background. That's nice, deep background. It looks like a big space. Looks awesome. Talking about the lighting. Again, you got the lighting in the right spot. You're looking down this way. You got blacks up here, which is taking away all of that bounce. You got your light over here feeding this thing nice and soft. Really good shadow. You got that cheek shadow looking really, really nice. All good. Nice outfit for the interview. Not a fucking white shirt ruining our whole level. You got all those things going for you. And you got great level in the background. You got really good level in the background. The criticism, or what I would be looking at and going, fuck, we got to change, is it looks like they're lit. It looks like this guy's lit. You know what I mean? And you can see it here. I look like I'm lit. I got this light. It's just there. This light does not match the ambient of the room at all. The rest of the room is so far down, you can feel that the light is just there. And the same goes for this. It feels like the light is just there. And you're saying, well, yeah, Patrick, that's where the light is. How do you make it not feel like that? Well, there's a few different ways you can go about it. And I'll tell you the more interesting way. One of the ways is that it is brighter. Here is so much brighter than the rest that you can lift the ambient. Or in this case, because you don't have a lot of crew, all you would do would be to knock the level out of that light. You would then have to adjust your exposure by opening up or taking out an ND, which would then raise the background. So you can knock a little bit out of your light, raise up the background. But I thought you just said you like that level in the background. And yes, I do. I like that level in the background. So what do we need in order to sell this as not being just a light off screen? Well, we need another one of these. We need another one of this level somewhere back here. We need to sell that this is coming from something that's not a light over there. So we need either you just make another little frame here, another little window frame. You give us a highlight because we don't have any highlights back here. We just have good level. We can have good room tone, but we need a highlight or two even. You know, give us one on the stairs here, give us something here, so that will say, and you can do this easy. This is, we're talking, you could source for it. If you got a Joe Leco, or Leco, as some people call it, you could source for it, and that's one of the easiest ways to get those nice crisp shadows. Or you could grid something with a harder light, or you could just add, even just backlighting these little steps here, just something at a highlight range that is going to be as much as this, right? That would be my thing here. So it doesn't feel lit. We need it to feel part of the ambient. Oh shit, battery. Does that make sense? Can you see that? Can other people see what I'm talking about? Am I just the only person who sees the lit feeling? I mean, you've done so much good work. You got so much good work in there that on him that it feels like you just need, give me something over here. Give me some sort of level. Just to, you know, if we go back to our light to dark thing, you got really good. I mean, that is fucking a ripper. Like if you were just going like this, that's your frame there. That's a good shot, man. That's a really good shot. But as you open it up, it starts to get harder and harder the wider you get. And you just need to think, okay, how can I continue the goodness that's going on here? How can I continue that further down the line? And I get it's hard to do when you're all by yourself. Okay, next one. This one, this I would imagine is the opposite side of the bus that we were looking at before. Before we were looking this way in the bus. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick. Oops. Now we are looking the opposite way in the bus. We're sitting right next to this guy. What I would do, easy way to make this more interesting, because what we've got here is almost flatness in this area. Flatness all the way here. You got good background. You got nice blobby out of focus people super close to the camera. You get a nice window over here. You've got highlight in the background. You've got this cool tunnel shape that's happening over here. Looking very nice. Everything except where we're looking. And it's almost identical to what we talked about before in the bus, where we need to fight this contrast somehow. And the only way that you can do that, say you're driving along, you happen to bring the floppy with you, you just throw that thing. Why am I not drawing? I'm drawing in black. You throw that thing behind you, and you want to suck up all of the shitty ambient light. We still want the side light. We still want everything that's coming from this window and this window. We still like those things. But this, all this shit in the front, it's flattening out all of our hard work. You can imagine. Imagine if it was, let's see, take black. Imagine this shot if none of this was here. If it was just all dark and all you got was this little highlight here. You got this little reflective bit down here, which is nice. You got the lips, which are looking good. You got this, then it cuts off. Imagine that. You'd be fucking loving life. And that's a real easy fix, right? That's just a black behind you. If you got a crew, you'd probably want to go larger black than a 4x floppy, because 4xs on a bus would be a giant pain in the ass setting that thing up. But you could even have someone sitting there, which is why I always tell people, in that little $2,000 kit that you're getting together, the most important thing is going to be blacks and whites. Get a bed sheet. Get a black bed sheet. Get something that will suck up light, because then you can just have your assistant behind you say, okay, if it's a first AC, say I'll do the focus on the barrel. Can you just behind me just hold up that bed sheet and make it as big as you can. Go like this and just suck up all of that light, and then you just get them to open it up a little bit. Go like this. See where leaking a little bit can get you more angle this way or more angle this way. Just find out where you want the light to come from. And that's a super easy fix. So I would say overall good composition, good idea. Or the other solution, if I don't know how much control of this person that you had, if you're stuffing them in there or just shoving a camera in their face, but you just fucking swap them to the other side of the bus. Swap them to the other side of the bus. You're still going to have that problem though, because we're now front on, as opposed to in this shot. Oops, where are we? Oh, come on. In this shot, we're much more sighty, so we're much more looking into the shadow. You still got some really good shape there. Whereas if you come to that shot, oops. If you come to this one, because we're looking so fronty at them, it's going to be harder. So even if you swap sides to the other side of the bus, it's still going to be difficult. The only way you can get around this is taking away level. If you're on a big budget thing, what would we do? We would just pump up the level over here. So we'd remove some people from these seats if these were extras. We'd pop probably a light mat like a 4, or a sky panel would be heavy, but some sort of mat, something small. If you could take out the seats in the bus, then you just spray it this way to give us more of an edge here. And then this, what you would be balancing to in this situation, even if you had a large crew, would be whatever the outside was bringing in. You just balance to that, and then you take away, once your camera's all set, you take away this way behind the camera, and you just suck up all that shitty bit that's in here. Okay, let's do, what do we got? One more, and this is the same shot as before, almost the same angle. Again, beautifully lit subject, just about creating that interest in the background. And you got great composition with these lines. It's more about peppering something into that blue. And just like that, at the end of the breakdown. So many thanks, Nick. It was a good job. I liked it. I'd be happy with a bunch of those shots in there. So I think definitely you've got more than your necessary for project assessment. You've got more than your 3 shots that you can put on a reel, right? You got some really good stuff. You obviously don't want to put the talking head stuff on your reel, but this is also, I don't know if anybody's thinking about spec work. These kind of shots here, whoops, where are we going? This kind of shot here, right? This is like spec, build your reel gold. Because traveling shots, you want to keep that reel moving and flowing and everything going forward and energy up high. This is this kind of thing. A little handheld float to it. This can cut in with a whole bunch of other shit. So really good job, dude. And yeah, I think keep it up. And I'm sure someone will get you to do another one of those because it looks the goods. Okay. Any other questions before we depart? Next week on the podcast is going to be a breakdown. We're inside of a plane. And there's... wait, 1, 2, 3. There's 5 different people in a private jet, and we shot it all on master anamorphics. And the idea is that we couldn't see the jet until the very end of the ad. We had to think that they were somewhere else. So we ended up in this little tiny private plane with on a 135 millimeter master anamorphic, trying to just squeeze in as much as we could, trying to keep everybody in this little tiny box, and then at the end reveal that they're in this private plane. But it was a challenge because there's 5 people in the plane, everyone's sitting in a different location, and we got to make it feel like they're flying. The sun is moving, there's clouds. So from a lighting perspective, it was a real big challenge to find an angle that would work for the light and for everyone's position. And in the end, when you've got that many people in such a space, it is about just lighting the space. If the space looks nice, then it makes sense that one person is going to be on a side that's a little bit more down. There's not quite as much shape to their face, but that still doesn't mean on shot-to-shot basis you can get in there and try and manipulate it to the best of your ability. So I would say that is next week on the podcast. Other than that, nothing really to report. Okay. Let's see. So this would be, if you're new to the live stream, this is where you stop watching. And if you got projects, send them in again. If they didn't get picked up this time, I know there's a lot of people that send stuff in that didn't get picked up this time. That's all right. Come back for the next iteration. And yeah, if you've got questions for the regular podcast, go to the hotline, and I'll try my damnedest not to forget about it. Okay, that's going to do it. We'll see you in the next one. Ba-da. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.